Welcome to government class. And in this government class, in the previous government classes, we'll be looking at the person or the institution of the local government. In today's class, under the series of local government classes we've been having, we'll be looking at the sources of revenue for the local government. How do local governments get money to fund the activities they do? How do they get money to build the public healthcare centers, the public schools, the public convenience, the markets, the motor parks, and the many functions that they perform? How do they get money to perform this function? How do they get money to ensure the continuous running of their day-to-day activities? The first source of revenue for the local government we'll be looking at in this class is grants. Grants are money given to the local government by the federal or state government annually to enable them to discharge their responsibility effectively, So grants are money given annually to the local government by the federal or state government to ensure they are able to discharge their activities, their responsibilities effectively. And there are four types of grants. We are going to be looking at in this class. The first grant we have is called the general or the block grant. The general or the block grant. The general or block grant is a grant that is given to the local government by the federal or state government based on their population. So the block or general grant is the money that the federal or state government gives the local government based on their population. So a local government area with a smaller population will receive a smaller amount of money than the one with a larger population, because this money is given to them based on their population. And this money is given to them to finance their recurrent expenditure. The money is not just given to them to embark on any project or any activity. It is to finance their recurrent expenditure. So let's look at it over again. The block or the general grant is a money. The block or general grant is the money given to the federal government, given to the local government by the federal or the state government to finance their recurrent expenditure, and it is equally based on their population. Yes, let's dive a little bit into economics. What is a recurrent expenditure? A recurrent expenditure means money that is spent not as a result of the creation or acquisition of fixed capital, but is spent on wages, salaries, purchases of goods and supply, and consumption of fixed capital. What is a fixed capital? Let's dive a little more into economics. Fixed capitals are assets that are purchased for long-time use, and they do not convert to cash. They do not convert to money on time. So examples of fixed assets are land, buildings, and equipment. So let's go back so that we don't mix things up. A block or general grant is the money the federal government or the state government gives to the local government based on their population to ensure that they are able to carry out their day-to-day activities. And it is not given to them to purchase fixed assets, to buy land, to buy building, or to buy equipment. It is given to them to pay their wages, the salaries, to pay for the consumption of fixed capitals. Probably the local government is renting the building that they are using. They have to pay their rent. That is what the block or the general grant entails. Money that is given to the local government based on their population to finance their recurrent expenditure. And I already explained recurrent expenditure earlier. This is the special grant. The special grant is the grant that is given to the local government to help them to meet particular services of national importance. The key word here is national importance. So if this service the local government wants to meet is not of national importance, it does not qualify for a special grant. So yes, I know you might be wondering what What then are issues of national importance that would qualify for a special grant? Services that relate to health, education, agriculture. These are services of national importance. So special grants are grants, they are money that are given to the local government to perform specific services as it relates to national importance. So, for example, the local government in this area does not have a good or a well-functioning healthcare center. The federal government gives them a special grant. This special grant is different from the block grants that they give them to ensure the day-to-day running of their activities. This grant is given to them for them to be able to construct the healthcare center they lack, for them to be able to construct schools or to invest in agriculture so that all of us can eat well. So yes, the special grants, they are grants that are given to the local government to provide specific services of national importance. If a service is not of national importance, it does not qualify for a special grant. And as we said, services of national importance are services that relate to health, education, and agriculture. The third type of grant we'll be looking at is the matching grant. The matching grant. The matching grant is simply a form of money. Every grant is money. Is a grant that is given to local governments that help themselves. So if any local government that is not willing to help themselves, they do not qualify for this grant. So what do we mean by local government helping themselves? When a local government embarks on a project themselves, they find out that, okay, we don't have feeder roads in this environment. We don't have feeder roads in our area. We don't have, or the feeder road is bad, is not pliable. Cars for accidents happen on this feeder road. It needs to be reconstructed. When a local government by themselves decide to embark on this project, the government gives them a matching grant to support them. So that is why we call matching grants that the federal government or the state government gives local government that decide to help themselves. So any local government that decides to embark on a project of importance, of national importance, or a project that the people really need, the federal government or the state government gives them a certain percentage of the amount they need to assist them. So that is why we call the matching grants that is given to local governments that help them. And the matching grant is also called the percentage grant. The percentage grant. What the matching grant does is that it also motivates the local government to embark on development projects of government priority. So another important key word to note with the matching grant is that if the project the local government is embarking on is not of government priority, is not of national importance, the government might not be obliged to give a certain percentage or to assist the local government. So government priorities are projects that involves health, education, agriculture, and construction of roads. The fourth type of grant we'll be looking at is the Equalization Grant. The Equalization Grant. The Equalization Grant is a grant that are given to the less developed local government areas so that they can catch up with the developed local government areas. So the federal government gives rural, poor or underdeveloped local governments this equalization grant to enable them to catch up with the rich and developed local government areas. So the equalization grant is basically a grant, is money that the federal or state government gives poor and underdeveloped local governments to enable them to catch up with the more developed and the urban ones. If you look at the previous class, when we looked at the reasons for the creation of local government, one important reason we state is the local government ensures even and rapid development of all parts of the country. So this equalization grant is given to the less developed ones so that they can catch up with the developed local government area to ensure that every part of the country is developed as the same. The second source of revenue of the local government to be looking at is the statutory share of the central government revenue. The statutory share of the central government revenue. The Nigerian Constitution stipulates that the revenue of the Federation be shared between the three tiers of government. That is, the revenue of the country is shared between the federal, the state, and the local government area. The local government receives the local government receives a certain percentage of the federally generated revenue annually. The percentage changes with time according to the Act and decrees. A recent development in Nigeria is that the Revenue Allocation Act provides that a share for the local government out of both the federal and the state government account revenue. So the local government gets a certain amount from both the central government revenue and the state government revenue. So this statutory share of the local government simply is their right. So this is different from grants. This money must be given to them. If it's yearly, quarterly, or monthly, it has to be given to them. It is the right of the local government to collect this money. And the money is, that is why we call it the statutory share of the central government revenue, their statutory allocation. This money is given to the local government. It is their right. If it's on a yearly basis, if it's on a quarterly basis, if it's on a monthly basis, but the money is the local government's right. And a recent development in Nigeria is that both the central and the state government have to give the local government a certain percentage of their revenue. So both the federal government will give the local government a statutory share, and both the state government will equally give the local government a statutory share of their revenue. This allocation, this money, is the right of the local government to collect it. It's not that the federal government is helping them, or they are not helping them. This is their right. The statutory share of the state and central government revenue is mandatory. It's mandatory, as I said, it is compulsory. For instance, in Nigeria, the Revenue Allocation Act of 1981 has stated that the local governments have a 10% share of both the federal government's accounts, in addition to a 10% share of the state government's accounts. So every local government in Nigeria has a right to 10% of the federal government's revenue and 10% of the state government's revenue. The statutory share of the central government revenue and the state government revenue is intended to replace grants. So this recent development in Nigeria, in which the central government and the state government have to give the local government 10% of their revenue, is done in such a way that it will replace grants. So the local governments and the state governments will no longer feel obliged to give grants to the local governments when they are undertaking specific activities. So what this does is that, since grants are not mandatory, grants are optional, statutory allocation is mandatory. This recent development in Nigeria, in which both the central and the state governments gives 10% of their general revenue to the local government, is done so that they do not have to pay the local government grants anymore. The third source of revenue of the local government that I'll be looking at is called rates. Rates refers to the levies, and levies are imposed fee, tax, or fine. They are imposed on people, on authorities. So rates refers to the levels collected by local government authorities for the services the council provides, for the services the local government provide. So the local government, they collect rates on motor parks. So for every car in the motor park, they pay a certain amount to the local government. For the opportunity of their car being in that motor park, they pay a certain amount to the local government. The same goes for the markets. For every store or stall in the markets, they pay a certain amount to the local government for the opportunity for the opportunity for them to use the store, for them to use that place to sell. So rates are levies collected by the local government for the services they provide. And rates are collected on market stalls, motor parks, supermarkets, and shops. Rates are equally collected for motor park licenses, television license, television station license, radio station license, and tricycles, and the rest. Rates are also collected on Ratable Adults. Rates are annual levels imposed on all ratable adults. So the local government equally collects, they receive rates from people that we call ratable adults. Who are ratable adults? Ratable adults are adults that are qualified to pay tax. Ratable adults are adults that are qualified to pay tax. So anybody that is qualified, that probably has businesses that qualify them to pay tax, is called a ratable adult. Equally, the local government collects rates from salary earners due to the pay-as-you-earn system that is put in place. So the pay-as-you-earn system that is put in place. So every employer they've removed the tax of the individual from their salary, and they've paid it to the appropriate authorities. So rates are also collected. Rates are annual levies imposed on all ratable adults, and ratable adults are those who possess finable income which enable them to contribute to the maintenance of the local government. Normally, all taxable adults are qualified as ratepayers. So any adult that is qualified to pay tax is also qualified, is also ratable. That is, the local government can collect rates from them. There are two main types of rates. We have the general rate or pool rate and the special rates. The general rate or pool rate and the special rate. What is a general rate or pool rate? The general rate or pool rate is a fixed equal amount levied on all ratable adults. So the general rate or pool rate is the same for every ratable adult, the same amount on all ratable adults. It is a general rate or pool tax. The general rate or pool tax is a fixed equal amount levied on all ratable adults. It is fixed, it is equal. Everybody pays the same amount of money. It is not according to the size of your business. It is not according to the amount of money you earn. Every ratable adult pays the same amount of money under the general rate or pool tax. The second type of rate we'll be looking at is the special rate. The special rate is a levy imposed by the government for specific services. This rate is similar to what we looked at in the last, is similar to special grants. We said special grant is a specific amount of money that the government gives local governments that embark on specific projects of national importance. So equally, a special rate is a levy that is imposed on by the government on all ratable adults for specific purposes. For instance, special rates could be imposed for education, for water, for health. So if a special rate is imposed on education, we call it education rate. Maybe the local government is currently building a secondary school in our local area, and then they need funds to complete this project, and then they impose a special rate on all ratable adults to pay for the completion of the building of this secondary school. That is what we call a special rate. It is not imposed all the time. It is only imposed when needed, and it is imposed for specific services. Unlike the general rate that is a fixed amount that everybody pays, and it is general. It is for everybody, not just for few. For every adult that is able to pay tax, they are ratable adults, and every ratable adult is required to pay that fixed amount of money to the government. It is important to note that all rates that is collected by the local government must be approved by the central government. So the local government is not They are not empowered to collect any rates from anybody without having it approved by the central government. So any rates that the local government is collecting from any individual or person must have been approved by the central government before they can collect such rates. We'll be looking at other sources of revenue of the local government.